Hi everyone, long-time subscribers of mine will know that I said before the result of the last referendum that I thought there would be a second referendum if we voted leave. And I've said it repeatedly on this channel that I think that we're going to have a second referendum. I think it's inevitable. Now, my reasoning for that was, at the time, you cannot have an in-out referendum without first defining what out is. Because if you do that, you're leaving the door ajar for the establishment and the ruling class who don't want that Brexit, remember. Said this time and time again. You're leaving the door ajar for them to wrap it all up in bureaucratic red tape and then propagandise the people into changing their minds. And nothing I have seen since has changed my mind. In fact, everything's really confirmed it, especially if you look back on previous votes that countries within the EU have had that have gone against what the EU wanted. For instance, you've got the Lisbon Treaty with Ireland there in 2008, the Ireland-Nice Treaty in 2001, and the Denmark-Maastricht Treaty. All of those went against what the EU wanted, made to vote again. And of course, you've got the France-Netherlands vote in 2005 and the Greece bailout in 2015. That went against what the EU wanted. They were just ignored. Now, whether you think we should stay in the European Union or not, that's not the point of this video, and I'm not going to try and convince you either way. I've done that many times on this channel. You can go back and see it. But the EU at the moment are refusing to negotiate another deal and remove this backstop, which, just in case you were wondering, this backstop is currently in the middle of the Irish Sea, in between the island of Britain and the island of Ireland. And here it is. Just kidding. Just like this wall, the ice wall in Game of Thrones, just in case you don't know what that is, just like this wall, the backstop is actually imaginary. It's a thing that they just invented to get over the problem of the Northern Ireland border issue, which I'm not going to go into at length here. But the thinking is that the reason that they have to have a border and they have to have this backstop, this wall, imaginary, you made it up. Anyway, the thinking is because of the £10 million in trade, in daily trade, that goes from Northern Ireland into the Republic of Ireland, the rest of Ireland into the EU, if you like. Because of the £10 million of daily trade that goes over that border, of which, and I checked this, the highest figure that I've seen is 6%. Only 6% of those goods are actually checked across that border anyway. The thinking is, if we leave the EU without somehow suddenly checking everything that goes across that border and having every delivery categorised seemingly perfectly, if we don't do that, then the sky will fall and the mountains will crumble and the seas will presumably wash over the UK in a tsunami of hypothetical stupidity. It's just, honestly, incredible. I've got my work cut out for me to actually describe all this lot. I'll do my best. But Bojo's plan, Dean, come on, you know we don't highlight the Guardian on this channel, okay? I know you're new. I'm very sorry. I've got a new guy who's doing slides for me. His name's Dean. He's a bit of a pozzard, and he's got this wrong. Well, sort it then. Edit it. I don't care. Do it quickly. You done? Okay. Bojo's plan. You've redeemed yourself with that, by the way. That's quite funny. Bojo's plan is to seemingly tell the European Union to go swivel, since they won't reopen the deal on this backstop. This huge backstop that's imaginary, by the way. And Bojo's plan is to say, bugger you lot, we're leaving, because you know what? That's what people voted for in 2016. It's hard to argue with that, really, is it? Because what he's saying is a Brexit under WTO rules is not only what people knew might be the scenario back in 2016 when they voted. If we couldn't get a deal, that no deal was an option, was there as a fallback position, and it is also the legal default fallback position. Now, this position, as you can see here, is actually, it's quite popular. And it's got a very, very strong base of support there. It wouldn't take him much with that base of support to get a majority, you know? But as with any scenario right now, I told you it was complicated, but as with any scenario right now, and because of the way Parliament is made up, with the DUP getting a bung from the Tories to have this deal in principle, of which no doubt some more money is going to be going their way in the next few months. But as with any scenario right now, because of the way Parliament is structured, he's going to find it tough to get a majority. Now, like I said the other day, they're making the rules up as they go along. And I did mention how I think it's Boris Johnson's plan to maybe have an election called and say we'll have the election at the third week in November, say, and therefore Parliament disbands 6 weeks before, and we sort of fall out at the end of October out of the EU with under WTO rules. That's the theory. That's what they think he was going to do. Okay. Well, the insanity of the last 3 years, that's how we are now by the look of it. But the insanity of the last 3 years seems to finally be coming to a head. I know, famous last words, but Jeremy Corbyn has started to show his cards here. And he said here on Twitter, I've written to the leaders of other political parties and senior backbenchers from across Parliament to lay out my plan to stop a disastrous no-deal Brexit and let the people decide the future of our country. Jeremy, just going to get people screaming, we did that 3 years ago. Anyway, I'll read this letter so you're under no illusions as to what his stance is, because I've seen so many people actually twist this to mean something else and it doesn't. It's convoluted, I know what he's saying here, but he said this: last week I wrote to the Cabinet Secretary Mark Sidwell, Integrity Initiative, for his view on how Purdah rules would apply if Parliament is dissolved for a general election campaign that straddles the Brexit date of 31st of October, as I just explained, maybe calling it in middle of November. Okay, I enclose a copy of his non-committal reply, which I received yesterday, so the Cabinet Secretary, Mark Sidwell, must have said, hey, I'm telling you that, and should inform our discussions. While it is likely that the issue will be contested in the courts, like I say, they're making rules up as they go along here, our priority should be to work together in Parliament to prevent a deeply damaging no deal being imposed on the country, denying voters the final say. This government has no mandate for no deal, and the 2016 EU referendum provided no mandate for no deal. Yes, you've structured those words beautifully, Jeremy, but I know how you've structured them in such a way, but people are right to say, listen, no deal was, we couldn't get a deal, we leave on WTO terms. That was what they voted for. Don't try and rewrite history and try and gaslight people. I therefore intend to table a vote of no confidence at the earliest opportunity when we can be confident of success. Following a successful vote of no confidence in the government, I would then, as leader of the opposition, seek the confidence of the House for a strictly time-limited temporary government with the aim of calling a general election and securing the necessary extension of Article 50 to do so. In that general election, Labour will be committed to a public vote on the terms of leaving the European Union, including an option to remain. Sincerely, Squirrel, Jeremy Corbyn. And you can see there, he's sent it to the leaders of each of the main parties, and also a bunch of Tories and ex-Tories down there who are known to be saying, right, okay, I'll join you in this vote of no confidence, Corbyn, when it arrives. And I'll join you in this cabinet that you want to sort of, lead, if you like, and call a general election once you're at the head of it. So that's his plan. Now, one problem, Corbyn, although some of the names at the bottom of that list are Tories, which may give you the numbers to do this temporary government, to call this vote of no confidence and lead this temporary government. Joe Swinson, seen here, whose record I highlighted on my channel just last week, who isn't so much of a yellow Tory as more the physical embodiment and reincarnation of Margaret Thatcher. Well, surprisingly, she's against something which could give her the second referendum that she says she's wanted all along and which what her party has wanted all along and stood for all along. Shocker, I know. I say surprisingly and shocker, but sarcasm. I'm starting to use it more and more to describe people like Joe Swinson. And yeah, humour is getting me through. It seems to be helping me. Anyway, so Joe Swinson, she gets worse. She's decided to do this thing where it goes against everything that she's been saying that she's wanted for ever. She's decided to team up with someone who hates Jeremy Corbyn more than she does. I know. She found that person. Here he is. Labour Deputy Leader Tom Watson. Honestly, if we lived in centuries gone by, we would have no MPs in Parliament right now. They would all have been beheaded decades ago. Where was I? Joe has teamed up with Tom Watson, uniting against Corbyn, their own beliefs and everything they've said all along and everything their parties have been saying and everything that they've said they wanted all. But hey, you know, politicians. She's teamed up with Tom Watson. Now, Corbyn's letter mentioned, so the reason I mentioned that is because obviously without the Lib Dems, he probably hasn't got this vote of no confidence and they're stalling it. So, yeah. She was complaining the other week that Labour wouldn't work with her. Labour haven't worked with her to get a second referendum. Labour have an option, and then she backs away. The hypocrisy, honestly, it's off the scale. It really is. Now, Corbyn's letter, he mentioned that the reason he's doing this is because he wants to avoid a deeply damaging no deal, because that's what awaits us. Which is his reasoning for his stance on this issue, his convoluted stance. It must be stopped, he says. He thinks he can get a deal. Now, the chief reason for this way of thinking, as I understand it, is we would have a high chance of a recession in the next year or so, in the coming years, say, and it would be extremely damaging to the economy. And this is because the financial forecasters, who are never, ever wrong, all say it's bad for the economy and we'll probably see a recession if we have a no-deal Brexit. Now, as I've said repeatedly on this channel, and my sarcasm may have given me away a little bit there, since when were these experts ever right? You know, did they forecast things in 2008? No? Really? They were the only ones saying everything was fine? Oh, right. So why the hell are we listening to them now? Huh? Secondly, almost everyone agrees, apart from those people who got everything wrong in 2008 and got everything they've got everything wrong. Get this. They've got everything wrong all the time. And whenever they get things disastrously wrong, like they did in 2008, they then get bailed out with all the people's money and face no consequences. It's not exactly an incentive for them to get things right, is it? Huh? Well, the other people, the media, the people that the media don't talk to or highlight, i.e. everybody else other than these experts, they have been saying that the signs are, including me over the last year, that the signs are that we are going to be facing a global recession the size of 2008, maybe even bigger and more catastrophic in the very, very foreseeable future anyway. And lo and behold, what do I see yesterday but this? Recession fears prompt selling in global stock markets. And this is because the 20-year bond and the 10-year, but I think I'm not sure whether it's the 10 or the 20-year bond, but the 20-year bond was less profitable than the 2-year bond, and it's inverted, they say, which means this is a precursor. Every recession in history has hit after this has happened. And obviously people are starting to sell, and it makes This makes it look certain that we are going to face a global financial crash within the next 18 months, very, very possible in the next few months. This guy, he says this, and it's everybody is saying this on all the experts on Twitter now. For the first time ever, US 30 years bonds have fallen below 2% rather. Recession, fear bubble, 27% of all bonds are already negative. Now what this means is people are investing in bonds that they know are going to lose money. In other words, if they actually took the cash out, that would be better financially for them. Pretty soon they have to tax cash on everybody, or everybody takes the money out of the bank, key, out of the system, and puts it in deposit boxes, safes, or under mattress, which would obviously, if that would collapse the entire global financial system. People like me, and I've been saying it just because I listen to all the people that the media don't listen to, who have been right for the last 20 years. You know, I listen to those people. Mark Blythe I listen to, and he's been expecting this, and he's been saying that what you will see in the coming period is a period of what they call stagnation. Now, I'm hoping to get somebody from the financial sector on. I've sent a few feelers out to try and explain just how bad this is. But it could really crash the whole system. It really could. And I can't honestly see the people letting them bail out the bankers again this time. We'll see. My advice? I don't know. Everybody's saying buy gold or buy Bitcoin. So take that what you will. Anyway, back to Jeremy Corbyn, because he wants to table this vote of no confidence when he can finally win it, which he can't without the Lib Dems, and to then form a temporary caretaker government who would be fully committed to stopping a no-deal Brexit and give the public a final say on whether we leave the EU and on what terms. Now, that stance might confuse you, especially if you live in the Midlands, like I do, and the North, which are, remember, historically Labour voting heartland. Since people in these historically Labour strongholds mostly voted to leave the EU, and some by a 2-to-1 margin. For instance, my constituents, they would, I think if asked, would probably love what they would consider a clean Brexit, with a Brexit under WTO rules, and then followed by a general election where they could then, you know, get behind Labour and get behind the Labour movement and get behind Jeremy Corbyn, and hopefully get Jeremy Corbyn in Downing Street after Brexit, outside of the European Union's neoliberal clutches, without any threat to his future plans to nationalise things like the railways and the energy sector or other industries, without any of those plans being scuppered by European Union level playing field rules or whatever red tape they want to throw at him. So if Jeremy's stance on this, with wanting to form this thing and go into another election and referendum, if it confuses you, join the bloody club. Because it seems to me that Boris Johnson is handing him everything that he would want on a silver platter. If Boris Johnson wants to go Brexit on WTO rules followed by general election, Corbyn, take it. Don't look a gift horse in the mouth. He's playing a game of three-dimensional chess here. I was listening to Mark Blythe last week, the economist who predicted like everything in the last 10 years, including the rise of Donald Trump and including Brexit. And he said that Jeremy Corbyn, to him, he's now nothing more than crisis management for a dying Labour Party. Now, I don't know about that. The Labour Party still has over 500,000 members and a huge movement behind it. But I think he does have a point, because how many more members do you think Labour would have? And I heard they lost about 43,000 or something like that recently. How many more members do you think if he would have in Corbyn if he actually stood up for what the working class in the North and the Midlands in this country, especially in the North and Midlands, but the working class throughout the country, if he actually stood up for what they overwhelmingly, remember the working class, the lower paid people, the middle class, etc., the historically Labour voting heartlands, they wanted Brexit. If he stood up for what they voted for, and maybe stood up more against the attacks that him and members of his supporters have had, you know, in this ridiculous smear against him. You got to, Mark Blythe might be right here. You got to entertain that possibility. He might be right again, and I honestly wouldn't bet against him. And all of this does, of course, beg the question: have they set it up this way? You know, so Parliament is paralysed at this time, during this time, and can't actually do anything, because they are certainly take advantage, are the establishment and the elites, with this, you know, what they're doing, especially with foreign policy. Because if you look at how smoothly the foreign policy of this country is running, it's still working with Iran and Venezuela and Russia and China and Assange. You know, I could go on. And especially if you look at how brilliantly the media have been doing this useless sitting Parliament's public relations for them, you know, keeping the people squabbling over whose fault it is, arguing whether it's the fault of the immigrants or the anti-Semites or the Russians, of course. I do hope the media faces a day of reckoning one day, soon, for their abdication of duties to the Fourth Estate over the last 2 decades. Honestly, I really hope there are repercussions for them. All right. I have to try at least to make sense of what's going on here, okay? And I know I'm at risk of repeating myself, but they don't want to give you Brexit, okay? The establishment, by which I mean the ruling elite, believe that Brexit is the existential crisis that will lead to the breakup of the United Kingdom. That's what they believe. I think they've got a point, because Scotland, they wanted to stop in the EU during the referendum and would most likely force another independence vote. There's your breakup of the United Kingdom. Wales have said that they might try similar, with Plaid Cymru saying having similar overtones. And Northern Ireland, well, they would probably become a neutral zone in the upcoming land war with the EU and Irish, no doubt, or something like that. Honestly, who's going to police the border? Are the EU going to police that Northern Ireland border? Seriously, the more I think about it, who's going to police it? We're not going to. We're not going to risk the troubles coming back. Are the EU going? Of course not. The skies will not fall. The mountains will not crumble. And all of this, of course, mentioning Northern Ireland, is embarrassing for the Tories. Because they gave the public this needless choice of Brexit in the first place, in a last-ditch, desperate attempt to gain overall power by appeasing the growing presence of nationalism in their party and indeed the country. Something which totally backfired on David Cameron when the country stuck 2 fingers up to the ruling elites and unelected technocrats in the EU, who have been increasingly telling people in this country what to do and how to live their lives whilst overseeing the largest transfer of wealth to the top 1% in history. It's extra embarrassing for the Tories because of all this, because it's all them that started it, of course, considering their full name as well, the Conservative and Union Party. The Union being, you know, unionists. Giving them a real headache, since if we don't get the Brexit they and the establishment promised but want to avoid so badly, they will probably, definitely be proving that voting in this country doesn't matter, rendering democracy in the United Kingdom irrelevant. Some of you will be argue that we're already there. I might be with you. Now, all of this, of course, is very confusing for people in the UK who are being fed a load of BS by the media, and no doubt frightening for the British citizens in it who are living here and have residence here legally, who were born in EU countries. Since it's going to be especially scary for them, I would think, since especially if we do get Brexit, like people are saying we will now. I'm still very on the fence about it. I don't want to give you it. And Jeremy Corbyn keeps scoring own goals the way he is. Why, Jeremy? And in some cases, I just don't think you're even taking part in the game. You're not even setting foot on the pitch, you know? With all this, we might actually end up with a post-Brexit, right-wing, authoritarian government blaming immigrants for all the problems, with a huge majority whose, honestly, their plan for a no-deal Brexit, for a post-no-deal Brexit Britain, was called Operation Yellowhammer, who my friend Jamal Thomas in America highlighted. It's called Operation Yellowhammer after a poem, I think it was by Enid Blyton, called The Yellowhammer. Mentioned a little bit of bread, no cheese, just enough for the masses to stop them from starving, but nothing more. Just enough to keep the peasants from revolting. This is the scary thing. We might end up with a right-wing, ever more authoritarian regime set on selling any and all assets the country has, including, and most importantly, primarily, the NHS to the highest American bidder. They're already, think about it, the Tories are already planning to give the prison systems more money, more extra money than they are planning to give the NHS extra. That should give you some idea as to where Boris Johnson's priorities lie. And I would think be a sign of things to come under a post-Brexit Tory Britain, with Boris Johnson, ex-host of Have I Got News For You, at the helm of a lapdog of a country who are taking their marching orders from ex-host of The Apprentice, Donald Trump, in his seemingly lifelong quest for global domination. It certainly seems to be our fate if we continue letting the ruling elites and their PR companies, the media, divide us into groups that do not define us in order to keep us fighting amongst ourselves and blaming each other for the problems that they have caused and are still causing. There you go. That's as best as I can explain the state of the country right now, and maybe a window into the United Kingdom's future. And while all of this is going on, a sidetrack, do you know what my MP is doing? She's campaigning for speed cameras to be put on the A449 Stafford Road. See that? And where's her office? 492A on the A449 Stafford Road. That's what my politician's up to. What's yours doing? Honestly, we need a revolution in this country. We really do. And if we don't get it soon, I think I'm going to have to start looking for renting opportunities abroad, you know, somewhere where the politics is a little bit less insane. Can you buy a ticket on a time machine to the collapse of the Roman Empire? Because honestly, that looks like a picnic compared to this debacle. Thanks very much for watching. Please make sure you subscribe. Please make sure you click the bell for a notification of when I drop further videos. And please support independent media any way you can. Like and share wherever you can. Support us. We really need your help. Even $1 a month to your favourite people, your favourite independent media It goes a hell of a long way if enough of you contribute. So thanks very much for all you do. And until next time, peace and take care.